Hello everyone and welcome to another random video on the internet. Today we are talking about who are often considered to be the big three of the Cadres among the power scaling community. Elder Centipede, Overgrown Rover, and Gouketsu. Besides Orochi, Platinum S and Psykos, these three are generally considered to be the top dogs of the Monster Association, and even among the association's members they're considered real heavyweight heavy hitters. Generally, individual cadres are meant to be stronger than individual S-class heroes, but these three transcend that by either facing off against two or more combatants of a level which most would consider to be among the upper echelon of S-class and generally dominating, or being implied to take the combined effort of several high-tier S-class heroes to defeat. But which one of these heavyweights is the strongest? Today we find out. Starting off, we have Elder Centipede. This colossus is an absolute unit, considered a natural disaster by even other monsters, and for good reason. With a body large enough to crumble cities through sheer size and regeneration that makes him ridiculously tough to put down permanently, he is a force to be reckoned with. This healing factor is so strong that it could literally bring back all of his internals after Genos blasted him from the inside, including probably his brain, since we see the blast coming out of his face too, out of his eyes and mouth, so presumably his brain is taking this head on and probably getting cooked, and this man still came back. That's actually a misconception I see quite a bit. People think Elder Centipede has a similar regeneration core to that of Clown Centipede. However, there is really nothing to support this, and in fact there is the counter evidence to that in the form of this feat where Genos blasts all of his insides, and he comes back like nothing. But talking about Elder Centipede scaling, his main showing comes from taking on the martial arts brothers, Bang and Bomb. During this fight, the brothers hit him with one of their ultimate moves, the Roaring Aura Sky-Ripping Fist, and shatter his entire carapace, only for the monster to molt and become even stronger. This does seemingly put a cap on his durability, as the brothers were able to deal massive damage. However, the issue with this is that Murata has stated in one of his streams that they, in fact, helped Elder Centipede with his molting process. So the carapace might have actually just been structurally unstable already. On top of that, Murata also blatantly states that this new body is bigger and stronger, even calling it an evolved Elder Centipede. So whatever anti-feats the previous version of him had, they may not apply as much anymore. All of this calls for Bomb, who is aware of his own power, the power of the Crossfang Dragon Slayer Fist that would later be used on Rover, and the power of Bang with the Awakening Breath, to blatantly state that they cannot defeat Elder Centipede, and the two brothers literally just grab the downed heroes and run. And they only stop when civilian lives are put at risk, with Bang stating he will go all out, using up all of his life's remaining strength, and even then, he never says he will kill or even chase away the monster. It's all or nothing, he has to try, but nothing is certain. This is made even worse for Bang when you consider that he is specifically saving his strength for a final showdown with Goro, and he constantly implies that he can only ever go all out one more time in his life before his life literally runs out. So Bang is willing to throw all of that away for a chance to stall Elder Centipede. And this is the same Bang who could fight on par with Monster Goro, who was using the Awakening Breath, Exploding Heart Release Fist, and the Roaring Aura Fist all in tandem, all at once, boosting his power by who knows how much on top of his monsterization, and Bang wasn't even fighting all out, he was still trying to coach Goro and everything. I also have a theory, and please take it as just that, a theory, but when Bang says he'll go all out against Elder Centipede, it may not just be referring to the Awakening Breath, but also the Exploding Heart Release Fist. We see that he can still fight after just using the Awakening Breath, so for him to say he'll drain away all of his life force, it may imply something greater than simply pushing his body to its limits, but instead actually surpassing those limits, which is exactly what the Heart Release does. And it is described to be a very destructive art on both the opponent and the user, with Goro's body clearly straining very much while using it. It certainly fits the description of what Bang was about to do, and unlike against Goro, who he hesitated to use this technique on because of the whole ordeal with his past, against Elder Centipede there really wouldn't be a dilemma like that. All this to say, Elder Centipede may scale even above a hypothetical full power Awakening Breath Heart Release Bang, But this is just a theory, unconfirmed. Some will say that Elder Centipede has a bad matchup for Bang, and that's why he appears so impressive, and I do agree, but the thing is, this guy's a bad matchup for everybody. Like seriously, 99% of the verse does not have the scale to deal with this thing. As fast and strong as Flashy Flash or Atomic or Bang or Darkshine are, they are not inflicting enough damage to overcome this thing's insane regeneration. His body is gigantic, and as we've seen, you need to do insane damage to actually put him down. Worse than destroying his brain even. By the time any of these guys do any sufficient enough damage to one end of his body, the other end will have already regenerated. That is how long this creature is. There is a reason why Gyoro stated there are only 4 heroes who can, not even defeat, but simply stand against Elder Centipede. In fact, even the Hero Association executives think that the only man who could ever beat Elder Centipede in a crushing manner is King, the strongest man on Earth. And obviously, we know Tatsumaki could do the same, but the general agreement between both the Hero and Monster Associations is that there are only 4 heroes capable of even combating Elder Centipede, and there is only one who could crush him. Before they see the full extent of what the Disaster Lolly can do anyways. Defeating Elder Centipede in one blow is also a feat that even the most arrogant, high-tier monsters like Black and Golden S consider to be worthy of consideration and caution. Elder Centipede is a monster who is a terrible matchup for basically everyone who doesn't have insane scale and power. And for most heroes and monsters, he is simply a force of nature that cannot be overcome. His vitality is unmatched for most of the series, and his durability, while not ultra top tier, is still extremely impressive. I've heard arguments stating that people like Child Emperor, for example, have seen Elder Centipede in action. They see the holograms and the recordings and stuff, and they believe that they, with their ultimate trump cards like Brave Giant, can stand against the Monster King, who is supposedly greater than that. However, this is pretty unsubstantiated. They haven't actually seen Elder Centipede in action. They don't know his durability, they don't know his vitality as much. They've just seen recordings of him wrecking up a city, presumably, as no one was recording his battle with Bang & Bomb. They just recorded the one in the city against Metal Bat. So yeah, this shouldn't really be an anti-feat at all, and again, both heroes and monsters agree that this thing is a calamity that only 4 people in the world can stand against on the hero side. However, his speed is not that great, as Genos from the end of Season 2 can react to him pretty well and dodge multiple attacks from him. At the same time though, Elder Centipede can blatantly outspeed a full power beam from this same Genos while going in a straight charge, so it's not like Genos is running circles around him or anything. They're pretty relative, with Elder Centipede probably being faster in straight charges. Not to mention that in the grand scheme of things, scaling to this Genos isn't actually bad, as this is a stronger and faster Genos than the one who was dodging laser beams over a short distance. So while in One Punch Man this speed isn't that great, in general, in fiction it's pretty good. There is also a moment where King is monologuing during a full speed charge from the monster, but this is a gag moment, it's not really a deal breaker in my eyes. Elder Centipede's offensive capabilities aren't the best either though, as he sort of semi-lands a charge on Bang & Bomb and doesn't really leave any notable impact. And lastly, one more thing I'll touch upon is Elder Centipede's fight against Metal Bat, during which Metal Bat takes one of his hits and gets up, as well as manages to briefly halt a charge before getting knocked halfway across the city. Both of these are not the greatest look, as this version of Metal Bat later goes on to fight Hero Hunter Garo and lose. But as you will see, strange anti-feats are not something exclusive to Elder Centipede, not to mention that he could be pretty casual here, not really going all out, just strolling across the city. And on top of that, Elder Centipede actually tanks a bunch of Metal Bat's strongest hits to the weakest part of his body, his face, and doesn't really take any damage, so it's pretty clear that Metal Bat doesn't actually scale anywhere near Elder Centipede. So overall, the general lore, hype, and his performance against much stronger fighters in the form of Bang & Bomb does firmly solidify Elder Centipede as one of the top tiers in all of One Punch Man in my eyes. A disastrous calamity, a tank like no other. Next up is Overgrown Rover. This doggy is most certainly a good boy, but also a devil who can put Hades Cerberus to shame. Rover's 2 greatest showings are getting punched by Saitama and fighting Bang & Bomb. Firstly, the Saitama punch. It is very impressive, as surviving anything from this man is a miracle feat, and the punch sends massive shockwaves throughout the underground base that concern both heroes and monsters alike, even reaching up to the surface. However, it is made explicitly clear that Saitama held back because he views Rover as an animal and not as a monster. Verbatim it is stated that he wanted to discipline him, not kill him. So while this is an impressive feat, Saitama can suppress himself to a level where he punches humans and doesn't kill them. So this feat, while great, is not the be-all and end-all by any means. What is really strong for Overgrown Rover is his fight against Bang and Bomb, during which the martial artist duo hits him with the Cross-Fang Dragon Slayer Fist, which is stated by Murata to be a level above the Sky-Ripping Fist and deals little to no damage at all. This is while Rover is injured from Saitama's punch, to the point that Bomb can visibly tell that he is injured, and while Bang and Bomb are buffed by Fubuki. To exactly what extent this nerf and buff respectively extend, we can't be sure. Fubuki seems to think the buff is pretty little, while Bang seems to say that it is pretty substantial. There is also a whole argument to be had about the Cross-Fang Dragon Slayer Fist versus the Roaring Aura Sky-Ripping Fist, as narratively, the Aura Fist seems to hold a lot more weight. It's the one that Garo uses, it's used only once in the series with several pages of setup, whereas the Dragon Slayer Fist is used multiple times, and it can also be used multiple times a day, whereas the Roaring Aura Fist is stated to be something that they can only use once a day. But regardless, Murata has stated that the Cross-Fang Dragon Slayer Fist is intended to be stronger than the Aura Fist, so I guess they just went about establishing that and showing it in kind of a poor manner. But regardless of what you think about the potency of Fubuki's buff, or the Aura Fist and the Dragon Slayer Fist and how they compare to each other, it is undeniable that narratively it is highly implied that Rover's durability surpassed Elder Centipede's in his base state, and I would wager that he's probably more durable than Evolved Elder 2, though that one is a bit unquantifiable either way. On top of that, Bang, Bomb, and Fubuki all think that if Rover landed one of his blasts head-on on the three of them, they would die, or at least be severely injured, which is also crazy. However, we do see Bang and Bomb catch one of these blasts, so the sheer heat of it is probably not that potent, and it's probably the force of the explosion that does the most damage. And we do blatantly see Garo tanking these explosions by the dozens, with this version of Garo definitely being far weaker than Bang and Bomb, so it may be arguable that Bang and Fubuki were overreacting a bit, but it is still the narrative implication that the blasts are dangerous to the brothers. And this brings us nicely to Rover's battle with Garo, where Garo darts around at relative speeds to him and tanks all of his shots, as well as managing to stagger Rover a little, even if it doesn't really amount to anything in the end. This is pretty bad, as while Garo does have heat resistance at this point specifically because he adapted to Rover's blasts, the shockwaves of these attacks barely damage him after the initial assault where Garo adapted. Which is also a crazy feat for Garo, by the way. Mans was literally about to get one shot, thought about drinking cola, said nah, and grew a one-shot tier stronger in an instant apparently. Yeah, as cool as Garo is, I have to admit the plot armor for him was kinda bad at some points. Now, this all seems pretty bad, but it is certainly possible that Rover was simply toying around with Garo. And that is fair to say, he does seem to be hopping around pretty playfully. At the same time though, Rover's general demeanor throughout the fight doesn't seem very playful. He narrows his eyes, frowning and seemingly annoyed. He blasts Garo point blank in a similar manner to Bang and Bomb, so it's a little unclear if him toying around can be used as an excuse. His blasts also may not be that fast because Fubuki, with no assistance from Bang and Bomb, as we don't see either of them grabbing onto her in a lot of these instances, is reacting to and dodging these blasts, and she also reacted to a point-blank blast and put a shield up. However, to swing back around, in this same instance Bang and Bomb weren't able to get out of the way and had to resort to blocking, so this is a very strange showing. Bang also states that they can't progress further into the base without beating Rover, which implies they can't just run around him, which then implies Rover would have to be somewhat capable of keeping up with them, which is nuts and would support the claims of Rover toying around against Garo. Speaking of this statement though, I used to say this panel right here when Bang says they've got to teach Rover to sit to argue that he is still pretty confident in their chances of taking Rover down, as he is just saying they'll teach him to sit in a pretty confident manner instead of resorting to throwing his life away. However, there are varying translations to this. I used the official Viz translation, but I checked the original kanji and it turns out that this actually is kind of a mistranslation. The fan versions are more accurate, and the more direct translation here is why won't it just sit? So yeah, nowhere near as confident now, and Bomb even starts losing confidence after his battle with Rover. Still, the fact remains that Bang wasn't about to toss caution to the wind, leave it all behind, and basically sacrifice himself to fight Rover. So Elder Centipede does seem to be the one who put more pressure on them overall, which is also a consequence of civilians being involved in that instance. However, here with Rover, there are also civilians extremely close by and other heroes at risk as well. So we do think if Rover posed that huge of a threat, Bang probably wouldn't have hesitated to bust out the big guns. Some more notes on Rover though. Psykos considers him to be one of the strongest cadres as well pretty blatantly, as she allows him to run around freely, unlike others who she picked specific matchups for. And she appears unnerved when she thinks Rover may have gone down, saying surely he hasn't lost. And even Tatsumaki points out that she even looks worried. All of this highly implies that Psykos views Rover as somebody who shouldn't lose, which is interesting considering that she said 4 heroes can stand against Elder Centipede. Whether she thinks Rover can stand against the people who could stand against Elder Centipede is questionable, but she pretty clearly does know that Tatsumaki is coming straight to her, so she wouldn't be the one fighting him. And she doesn't know King is here, and Metal Knight is definitely not here, she knows that for a fact. And Blast is also not here, so she could just be considering the heroes who she knows are available. Which is still impressive because there's still Dark Shine, there's still Flashy Flash, so that's still good. Psykos also tries to bring Rover to distract Tornado, though in this context it's pretty clear she would have called any cadre. She just called Rover because she knew he would be free to come, or at least she thought she did. Rover does defy her order, even after being stated to submit to stronger beings than himself, which also does make him out to be extremely powerful, as Psykos believes she can beat Tatsumaki while also thinking Tatsumaki can stand against Elder Centipede. However, this could easily just be a case of Rover never having fought Psykos and therefore not knowing how strong she is. So him not submitting could just be like that time when my mask thought he could take on Flashy Flash and make him submit to him. Rover also basically makes Fubuki have a panic attack, and Bang also says he must be among the Monster Association's strongest members as well. So again, very impressive stuff for Rover. Lastly, even other monsters view Rover as extremely impressive, like when Neon was absolutely flabbergasted that Rover was beaten in one punch. Why he tried to attack him after that, I can't really say, but good attempt, I guess. I know I might seem like I'm a little bit against Rover here, but the thing is, I just see a lot of these arguments and I don't really think they're that justified, some of them. Like, Rover is still extremely impressive, as I've already established. His durability is absolutely ridiculous, and his blasts being implied to be able to damage Bang and Bomb, and potentially his speed scaling near them as well. However, I just do believe that some other arguments that are used aren't really that impressive for Rover, or are a bit too vague to be useful. So overall, as you can see, Rover, while having physical heights higher than Elder Centipede, maybe doesn't have as much hype and has a lot more questionable factors to him. Still, he is a beast and definitely one of the top tiers in One Punch Man. In stark contrast to the other two, Gouketsu is by far the most vague of the trio, having very few feats, but all of the hype. He is definitely the strangest of the bunch. However, what little he does have paints a very interesting picture. Starting with his feats, Gouketsu really only dominates Suiryu, who while powerful is not really comparing to the Cadres, and he dominates Bakuzan, who Gouketsu himself states should be a dragon level threat. And this feat in particular I do actually think gets downplayed a lot. Gouketsu's frame of reference for what a dragon level monster is would obviously be the Cadres, meaning that he thinks Bakuzan is cadre material, as being a dragon in Goro's eyes is what qualifies a monster to become a cadre. This should mean that at bare minimum Gouketsu would be comparing Bakuzan to a monster such as Gums or Neon, a low tier cadre. And that's pretty much the only frame of reference he has to go off of to our knowledge. So already, Gouketsu is dominating Gums and Neon level combatants at the minimum. However, there is also a hard cap, as Gouketsu warns Bakuzan that he knows several monsters stronger than him, so to nobody's surprise, Bakuzan isn't like high cadre material or anything by any means. I just wanted to get this out there since he should be on the level of the bottom tier cadres, maybe a little higher, but not a lot. Still, Gouketsu schools Bakuzan really badly. literally catches a strike with 2 fingers while not looking, extremely casually deflects his punches and sends him flying with a casual wave of his hand, casually blocks a barrage with 1 arm, and he's aura farming while he's at it. He never changes his stance or posture, he doesn't even face him straight on, and then a single punch from him is implied to be more than enough to one-shot Bakuzan. This is how badly Gouketsu would murder the low-tier Cadres. He is quite literally replicating Saitama's death punch here, and against Genos too, which we will get into in a moment, but before that I want to discuss one final feat. In his battle with Saitama, Gouketsu splits the clouds with presumably a punch or a kick, which has been calculated to around large mountain level, a very similar range to where the earthquakes caused by Rover might scale, funny enough, and also a very similar value to the amount of force that Homeless Emperor puts out with one of his spirit bombs. Not saying that these characters cap at large mountain level, certainly not, I'm just saying that these destructive capacity feats all scale around the same level. But now, the most infamous showing and group of statements the Giant has, of course, is for when he one-shots Genos, and then what Genos goes on to say after he wakes up. In his mind, Gouketsu is the pinnacle of everything that he has ever seen, to the point that Genos remarks that his strength is unfathomable, almost like that of Saitama, and that multiple S-class heroes need to team up with Saitama, otherwise they will never defeat him. At this point, Genos has seen Saitama one-shot Carnage Kabuto. He has seen Saitama one-shot the Meteor, which is something Bang actually views as something above his own capabilities to achieve. He has seen Tatsumaki stop the bombardment from Boros' spaceship, which wiped out 99% of City A, and was implied capable of killing all the S-class heroes on the ground, and Genos had also witnessed Darkshine fighting Carnage Kabuto in a simulation in the audiobook Genos Training, which is stated to be an extension of the anime story, so he would know Darkshine's approximate full power since the big guy did take 15 minutes with this battle. Now, all of this is well and good, but Genos is totally having a schizo attack here, right? Obviously we know Saitama or Tatsumaki or King could one-shot Gouketsu, but the very fact that Genos believes Gouketsu to be above all those other insane things he has seen does make you wonder. Still, this is all ramblings of a concussed Genos, and if this was the only reasoning for having Gouketsu high up in the ranks of the Cadres, I would dismiss it. The problem is, it's far from the only hype statement that Gouketsu has, and these next few come from far more credible sources. Firstly, Orochi seems to show special attention to Gouketsu, as he specifically calls out that he does not see him returning to the base. Kind of odd for the usually pretty unfazed and aloof and not really caring Orochi, but who knows, maybe this is just a thing where he views Gouketsu as a prodigy, since it's implied he personally brought him in and all that. Sure, that could be the case. But then Gyoro comes along stating that it would take multiple S-class heroes teaming up to give Gouketsu a hard time. Not even beat him, just give him a hard time. She also says give even you a hard time. Even you, implying she views him as particularly impressive. Gouketsu also tells Gyoro not to underestimate him right after this, so he seems to believe that he could solo multiple S-class heroes, although he does admit later that he is aware that he can't solo the entire association by himself. But most damning of all, when Gouketsu bites the dust and Gyoro sees the body, what does she say? How could this happen to Gouketsu? Who did this? And then she pauses, and you can see her eye narrow with blood vessels appearing, more of them than usual anyway, and then she says apparently this will not be easy. And no joke, after this she creates an imaginary being in her mind, stating the Hero Association may have weapons higher than S-class. And the panel right under shows, you guessed it, the guy who defeated Gouketsu. She literally creates a whole new class of threat, a whole new entity in her mind after seeing Gouketsu go down. Gyoro thought 4 heroes could stand against Elder Centipede and have a chance at winning, but Gouketsu, there wasn't a single hero she could think of who could beat him. I used to argue that maybe this was just her thinking the stronger heroes aren't nearby since she saw their locations previously, but she probably would have just come out and said that if that was the case. Instead, she asks who could have done this. Like legit, it seems like she didn't believe anyone could take Gouketsu out one-on-one. Like, I used to argue against it, and I had a pretty extended, like, debate about it a while back, like a year ago. But, like, now I kinda don't see any, like, really strong counter-arguments for it anymore. Like, I don't know, dude. Like, is Gouketsu really that built? Like, Tatsumaki can fly across cities in minutes. It's a very blatant thing that she can do. Like, we literally see it in a bonus chapter. She, like, hears of a monster attack, flies over there immediately and kills him in a different city. Like, it is so easy for, like, the top tier S-class, like Flashy Flash and Tatsumaki, to get places. Like, some S-class heroes don't have very good travel speed like Metal Bat or probably Bang and Bomb either. They don't really have that good of a travel speed. But Tatsumaki and Flash, they do. They could have gotten there, even if they were on a different side of the continent. It is kinda weird. It is kinda weird. But then at the same time, it's like, okay, why didn't they fly to Gouketsu's location then? It's like, the heroes just have good travel speed when the plot demands them to. And that's kind of the issue here. Like, do you believe that Psykos believed that Tatsumaki could have flown over there? Or something like that? Or do you believe that she wouldn't believe that and she just thinks, okay, no one nearby was strong enough to do this, who else could have done this? But the fact remains, 100% after seeing this, she literally creates a whole new class of threat. Like, it is insane how much of an impact Gouketsu left on her. Hey, Editor Satori coming in here. I wanted to add, obviously we know Orochi is also in on this whole greater threat than the S-class thing, along with Psykos, because they both refer to such a threat. But Orochi actually attributes both Gouketsu and Sentichoro to this incomprehensible threat. Even though we know some of the monsters believe that King killed Sentichoro, apparently Orochi believes that it was someone else. So Psykos could also be taking this into account, and when she says there may be a threat greater than the S-class, she might also be thinking not just about Gouketsu but Elder Centipede as well. So there is also something to consider. It's not just Gouketsu's death that made them this wary, it's also Elder Centipede's, according to Orochi at least. Oh, and by the way, Orochi actually gets excited after coming to this realization. The fact that this guy killed Elder Centipede and Gouketsu actually gets the Monster King excited and convinced that this is his worthy sacrifice and all that. I'm pretty sure I don't need to tell you why this is super impressive for both Gouketsu and Elder Centipede. And this extends to Rover too. Orochi is actually surprised that he got scared, and Rover was sort of the first piece in the puzzle, like who is this guy? He beat Rover. Oh, he must have also beaten Gouketsu and Elder Centipede. He beat the big three. This is my worthy sacrifice. This is the one. So again, ultra impressive for all three of them, because the Monster King, I don't need to argue here. Like, what else is there to say? This is also a major wake-up call. Until now, she thought things would be relatively simple, even with the knowledge that there are 4 people capable of standing up to monsters of Elder Centipede's caliber. But Gouketsu goes down. Shoot, this is not gonna be easy. And then she makes up a whole new class of enemy that she needs to worry about. Talk about some serious hype being given to Gouketsu here. Again, no matter if you think that a hero could have done this or not, in Psykos' mind, she is looking at Gouketsu's body, and she is thinking, Jesus, there must be something greater than the S-class, and this isn't gonna be easy. Like, it is insane levels of hype. So for Gouketsu overall, he has some pretty impressive showings, but the real meat and potatoes here are those statements and that hype from Gyoro, who specifically can read power levels. These statements are by far the biggest thing he has, and it's just kind of up to interpretation to speculate what really makes him that strong. Is he a god tier in stats? Does he have techniques that are on par with Bang or something? We will never really know. So my question to you is, now that I've laid out the arguments for this trio, who do you believe is the strongest? Is it the sheer scale and vitality of Elder Centipede, the durability and firepower of Rover, or the hype and lore of Gouketsu? I will say for me, when it comes to raw feats and nothing more, my ranking would be Gouketsu in last place, then Elder Centipede coming in second, and then Rover taking first place, If we go by raw statements and hype, then the ranking completely flips, with Rover being at the bottom, Elder Centipede in the middle, and Gouketsu on top. And if we go with who has the best matchup spread, then the ranking shifts again, with Elder Centipede taking the dub pretty firmly in my opinion, as I can see a lot more people giving Rover and Gouketsu a hard time, like Bang, Flash, Sunblade, Atomic, and so on, because those two are a lot more susceptible to damage, since they have neither the insane scale necessary to brush off usually fatal attacks as paper cuts, nor the regeneration to continuously keep going, whereas Elder Centipede possesses both. And while I could see people of Flashy and Bang's caliber eventually maybe whittling Rover or Gouketsu down if they work in groups, I really cannot see Elder Centipede being taken out that way. Like, he is just way too much of a damage sponge. So yeah, I can't see a lot of people who I think may be able to take Rover or Gouketsu down taking Elder down. So in terms of a matchup spread and how many people in the series they beat, my bet is on Elder Centipede tanking and soaking up damage and outlasting more opponents than the other two could defeat. As for their individual matchups amongst each other, if we take the full hype of Gouketsu as valid, I think he probably should have the attack potency to harm Rover and the scale to possibly put Elder Centipede down with his massive shockwaves, since he is one of those rare cases where he does have that kind of scale. But if you do not take the statements as valid, then he loses to both pretty handily. As for Rover versus Elder Centipede, this is an absolute stalemate. Rover cannot put Elder Centipede down, it's questionable if he could ever harm him, and if he could, Elder Centipede could just regenerate and keep his weak spot, his head, so high that it's hard to reach. Not to mention he can regenerate even if his brain is exploded. But on the other hand, Elder Centipede blatantly, 100% certainty, cannot damage Rover. At all, not even a scratch. And Rover is much faster, so he's not landing a hit either. So yeah, it is just an absolute stalemate. But overall, I think these three are very even. They are the big three of the Cadres. They're all relative to each other and excel at different things in my eyes. If I were to do a tier list, they would all stand right next to each other. Now, what else could be interesting to do is these three, just the three of them, versus all of the S-Class minus Blast, Tatsumaki, and King. I feel like that would actually be a very interesting topic to do in the future. But for now, with nothing else to say, I wish you a great rest of the day. Goodbye.